Dave Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez and Shawn Windsor, and another draft is in the book, boys. The Detroit Lions just finished Brad Holmes' first draft as general manager. Penei Sewell, of course, the first pick. Look, I mean, draft grades, they kind of are what they are, right? I mean, you really assess a class 2-3 years down the road. Everyone knows that. But in the moment, I like what they did. I like the first pick. Maybe I thought there was maybe a little better value in round, 2 than Levi Onwuzurike, but he runs hot and cold with scouts. Some people like him, some don't, and they got some good value on day 3. I'm a fan of what Brad Holmes and the Lions did. Let's hear your thoughts, Carlos, starting with you.
It was almost draft malpractice to take 3 consecutive linemen. I mean, that was just insanity. As you know, I hate the idea of taking an offensive lineman in the first round. It's just stupid. You have too many other playmakers, too many other needs. Penei Sewell will probably be a very good player.
Can I stop you real quick? Let me stop you real quick. If the Kansas City Chiefs had an offensive line, do they win the Super Bowl? I mean, what is your? Why do you hate offensive linemen when that?
Or if Tampa Bay doesn't, Tampa Bay doesn't have Vita Vea, right, or Vita Vea, do they win to the Super Bowl, right? Or their offensive line? But go ahead, Carlos. Let's not pretend that the team that won the Super Bowl didn't change their record halfway through because of offensive line play. Or, by the way, they got their best defensive tackle back, who they drafted in the first round 3 years ago.
A good offensive line may not always lead you to Super Bowl titles, but it always makes you a good team, a contending team if you have, some other.
And where are the best playmakers from, by the way? We're just adding questions to you, Carlos. Yeah. Where are the best playmakers in the league? Where were they drafted? Most of them. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The middle of my sentence was interrupted. So getting back to the great point I was making, you can find these guys outside of the first round. There were 6 offensive tackles in the Pro Bowl this year. 3 of them were drafted in the 3rd round or later. There was 1 first round draft pick on the offensive for the Bucs and the offensive line for the Chiefs last year when they won the Super Bowl. You don't have to spend this kind of capital to find these guys. We've even seen in Detroit, the Larry Warfords, of the worlds, Dominic Raiolas, like they were really good players, Pro Bowl caliber players. They were not in the first round. You should be able to find these guys. I mean, one of the points I made was Hank Fraley is a really good offensive line coach. He got Matt Nelson, an undrafted, converted defensive end, to stop Khalil Mack in spot duty, jumping into that game against the Bears late last season. He's a good coach. If you have good coaches, you should be able to get more out of your offensive linemen, and as far as the defensive tackles, like, listen, the first one was fine. Yes, you needed a guy, in the middle, in the trenches. They didn't get enough push. I gave that grade a B. I liked it. But then taking a second one, I mean, it was just like, what are you doing? We're taking 3 straight. And I hate to say I'm like agreeing with Chris Spielman, but as Dave pointed out, and as he said in February, he thought in today's modern NFL, you build from the outside in. Why? Because those are the playmakers. Those are the guys that are hard to find. It's hard to find elite playmakers outside of the first round. Martin Mayhew could not draft an offensive playmaker after the second round. He did get Theo Riddick at one point, but I think it's just harder to go that way. I think you can find interior offensive linemen and sometimes defensive linemen. Now, if you have a stud, if you have an Ndamukong Suh and an Aaron Donald, these kind of guys, then there's something different there. A guy who's going to produce sacks. But offensive line, to me, it's like, what's the main thing they do? They stop things from happening. They're the worst athletes on the field. They don't really do much other than stop a guy here and there, but they can't do and even tackles can't do things on their own. The film that you see of Penei Sewell, like knocking guys 10 yards back in college. First, that's college. Most of those guys are pumping gas probably right now that he knocked into the second row. And second of all, in the NFL, he's not going to do that. He's not going to be knocking, Daniil Hunter 10 rows back. I mean, it's a weird, it doesn't translate all the time.
Carlos, you make a really good point that he was doing that against college guys, because Devontae Adams, the pro guys that he was playing against last year it was amazing what he was doing against all those pro cornerbacks that he was destroying. So, and every other receiver in the draft. And to your point, because you were feeding us so much BS there about, the Pro Bowl offensive linemen, I had a chance to look up the Pro Bowl wide receivers too. 8 of them, you said 4 or half of the offensive tackles, right, were first round picks. Well, guess what? 2 of the 8 wide receivers were first round picks. Tyreek Hill was a 5th rounder. Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, AJ Brown, certainly not, first rounders right there.
Chris Godwin was the third.
This is exactly what I mean. You're making your case against yourself that you look at these receivers and you can find them anywhere as well. DK Metcalf round 2, Devontae Adams, some of these guys. Yes, you need playmakers in the NFL, but if there's not a playmaker that's worthy of taking or that's ranked higher than the best player on the board right there, why would you leap the best player when he can fill a need and be a long-term starter for you and have so much upside?
Go to Shawn Windsor.
No, I just want to continue the Carlos questions. I mean, I was thinking about you were speaking about the Super Bowl teams. You mentioned Tyreek Hill. I threw out Chris Godwin, 3rd rounder. But again, you just think about that dynamic of that field and that game. And I understand the Lions are a long way from either of those teams. Patrick Mahomes was running for his life, and Tom Brady was not. It's really, again, that simple. And we hate to simple. I know a lot of football people, you don't want to simplify it, right? It's a complex game in a lot of ways. I get it. Most of it's done. I mean, maybe Dave does. Carlos and I don't even understand offensive line play. We're sitting there watching it. We don't know what the assignment is, which way they're supposed to go, what kind of technique they're supposed to use. You're guessing, right? So the fact is, unless it's baseball, Carlos doesn't know what he's looking at anyway, and I don't either. So maybe Dave does, but I think that's part of it, Dave, is that, it's easier to see, somebody beat a defensive back one-on-one, or it's easier to see a running back make a cutback move and make somebody miss, right? So you're like, oh, wow, we want one of those. But I would argue, Carlos, the same, what Dave's saying, the same's true for running backs, probably even more so. Where are the best running backs from? So when you say playmakers, who are we really talking about? If it's not receivers or running backs, some kind of other position we don't know about?
Yeah, I mean, cornerback was a huge, was a big position of need. Patrick Surtain was there. J.C. Horn was there. That's something they need. Those guys are hard to find. Those guys don't shake loose very often in free agency either. I would have loved them to. I want
you to find me one talent evaluator in the NFL, like one high-level talent evaluator in the NFL who ranked Patrick Surtain ahead of Penei Sewell as a prospect. Like Penei Sewell was considered, again, this is not universal because, everyone is different, but by and large, he was considered one of the top 3 prospects in the draft. Patrick Surtain wasn't even the first cornerback drafted. Like he wasn't considered the top cornerback by everyone. A lot of people thought the top cornerback, most talented cornerback, was the Virginia Tech kid, Caleb Farley, who went, way down because of injuries. So I don't know what, you don't pass elite talent to take lesser talent, even if that talent is a good talent.
When you already have 2 first rounders and a 3rd rounder on an offensive line, you do not need to overstock that position. It's overspending your capital on a position that's not of need. You need a cornerback. Yes, Penei Sewell is probably graded in the magical minds of scouts who all get together in this cabal somewhere and decide, hey guys, who's drafted higher? Who has more skill? I like his back pedal. I like, whatever these position, Kuiper, best available. By the way, best available player. That's the best, one of the best branding BS jobs the NFL has come up with of he was the best player available. Well, golly gee, I guess he was the best player available. No, you have to fill positions of need. Otherwise, Dave, how about this? How about you just take an offensive line with all 7 of your picks then? The offensive line was the best player available at every doggone spot. We had to take them. No, it's lunacy. You have to address needs. With a team that's rebuilding this way, that's so thin, especially in the defense, you should have gotten a cornerback. Or I would have preferred them. Now, let me ask you this. I would have preferred them to trade back and get Micah Parsons if that could have happened, or there were plenty of other good players, very good players, probably of good caliber that could have been in the mid round of the first round. And I like what Holmes did later in the third day, but tell me this. Do you think there was a possibility, with your good friend, Brad Holmes, now your coffee partner on Thursday morning, what could they have done that? Do you think now he's talking about he was going to move up, which would have been even crazier to move up to get Penei Sewell. But would he have considered, I think you said in your story, he got a call or something about moving back, but he didn't like the offer, right?
Got a call when, Wednesday night, he essentially made an offer. He was asked to make an offer. to a team that was, back deep in the draft, and he did, and it was for a lot of draft capital. And the team thought about it, ended up, saying it was a little too rich for them. After we talked Thursday morning, there was another offer, a move back, which he indicated was in the 20s, and again would have netted some significant draft capital. And but the same thing where he said, I think his line to me, I didn't put it in the story, was, look, this is, I'm not trading this pick for a box of Cracker Jacks, right? Like you want, you need excessive amounts of future draft capital to move back that far. So I don't think there was anything worthwhile moving back for that would have kept them in the range of those cornerbacks or Micah Parsons, Carlos. I do believe, my own personal view, I would have rather seen the cornerbacks than the Micah Parsons, because you try to build the beast. And I think those players were just better, maybe culture fits, fits for the Lions, as good a talent as Parsons may be. But, look, you talk about need, and I don't want to spend our whole time on here talking about the first round pick, but you talk about need. The Lions, I mean, their left side of their line was pretty good, but their right side, you got Hal Vaitai starting at one of the places, and Terrell Crosby is a free agent. Like, that's a significant upgrade. And then beyond that, when you think about when the Lions are going to be contenders, it's not going to be 2021, right? It's going to be 22 or 23, maybe more likely, or right, if things go well. Well, Crosby's long gone by then. Taylor Decker, who knows? This is the first year of, the first year of a 4-year extension. He turns 28, if I'm not mistaken, later this fall. So, you're projecting ahead when Decker's contract is up and he's 31 years old, and you should be a significant contender if all goes well. You got a plug and play left tackle that you're just moving sides, ready to take over for Taylor Decker, who at 31 years old maybe is ready to walk off or go somewhere else, or maybe you don't want to pay him. So I think there's a lot more that goes into it than just saying, well, we have a starter right now for week 1 in 2021. At right tackle, we need to get a different position instead.
You know who else had a starter at shooting guard, excuse me, in 1984? The Portland Trailblazers. Clyde Drexler was their starting shooting guard. And they thought, you know what? We're gonna go by position and need. We don't really have a center. We're not gonna go for the best talent available. We're gonna take Sam Bowie and not Michael Jordan. So there's your need based. You know what I mean? It's, come on, man. You always take the best talent. And by the way, what's wrong with having a pretty good offensive line? The New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts dragged 55-year-old quarterbacks to the playoffs this past year behind great offensive line play. Guys that could barely throw out routes or throw down, as I wrote, and I hate to say as I wrote because that sounds like Carlos. Guys that could play could barely throw a 30-yard pass. Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers had noodle arms, and they got to the playoffs because they got time, period. And their running backs had some room to run.
The argument is not that you don't need a good offensive line. It's that you don't need to spend this kind of capital on building the line. Teams can put together good offensive lines without having to go first round. ESPN had a stat the other day during the draft that it said, like, since 2015, the Lions have had more first round draft picks committed to the offensive line than any other NFL team, which is why the Lions have been to the Super Bowl for 6 straight years.
Oh, it's
right?
not. It's because those picks busted. Gosder Sherrillis, right? That was a great pick, huh? I mean, Laken Tomlinson, he lasted a season and a half in Detroit. So it's not about the position, and this goes for any position. It's about the player and getting the right player, and that's to Sean's point. You take the best player.
And by the way, as far as defensive tackles, I know, again, Carlos, you like the little bobbles, the bubbles, the shiny stuff, the playmakers, whatever. And I know you need playmakers, but getting back to the defensive tackle argument, you're thinking maybe more about edge rushers or even linebacker rushers, and I get it. You need that. Again, get back to Tampa and their fabulous linebacker, Devin White, right? He was causing, but was there a player like that? I mean, maybe that's Micah Parsons. I don't know, but was there a guy like that, Dave, available in the draft? Those tackles, though, what do? They make it uncomfortable up the middle, and then you're running for your life. And we saw what happened with that with Mahomes.
Yeah, look, again, let's leave the first round talk right here. Maybe this will spin us into the second round a little bit, because we're going to have, I don't know that we're going to be able to convince Carlos's warped mind, Sean, that he's wrong on that. But no, look, I think, if we sort of look at an overview here of what we liked, what we didn't beyond round one, I sort of agree with Carlos in this, that it's not about the picking defensive tackles back to back. I just thought there was a little better value in some other positions. But, Brad Holmes was a guy that he thought about trading up for Levi Onwuzurike, so he was one, I think, as a prospect. Onwuzurike ran hot and cold with scouts, right? There were some people that really liked him, some people that, didn't see it, and Brad saw it. And obviously saw a lot of it on the West Coast with some of those Pac-12 guys. He was willing to trade up. I think you do need to build and get some good interior pass rush and build through the trenches and whatever you're doing. So I don't have a problem with him drafting the positions. There were a couple guys that I liked a little bit better. You're talking about that linebacker play, Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa from Notre Dame. I think he was one. Not big, and that was sort of the knock on him. Trevon Mooring from TCU, the safety, that was another guy that I sort of had targeted for the Lions. But hey, I spend a whole lot less on scouting than they do, so I always that's why I tend to trust what the scouts do a little bit more than my own eye.
Carlos.
Yeah, I think, to me, the value, and, I think this is what Dave's kind of getting at, is the draft to me is about value, is, where you're picking, right? What are you getting there? And also, to me, I think it's about need. I mean, right now, you do need to, they're not going to contend this year, so you can take a few flyers on guys. That's okay. I wrote before the draft, the Lions almost can't go wrong, unless they take a long snapper. They pick somebody, who, if they really believe in them in the 4th round or 5th round, whatever it might be, that's going to fit, because, and that's what's important is right now building that roster, because even if you take a cornerback, they're probably going to struggle, their first year. It's going to be hard with COVID and all this stuff still going on, right? A lot of these rookies may not be as good as we hope they're going to be because of the weird, year that we've been through. But you need to, I think you need to find, you need to help yourself, because free agency is pretty much over right now. Some guys will shake loose during training camp, they'll get cut, whatever. You might find some veteran out there, whatever. But this is it. The draft and free agency are pretty much done. And now this is it. This is your roster. How much better are the Lions right now on defense? How much better are they at wide receiver? Even Brad Holmes admitted to himself after he drafted the USC receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, he said, he made a joke, finally people can get off my ass about, drafting a receiver. He knew that there's a need there. People are clamoring for it, so that's my issue with this. It's just in those positions, whether, like Dave said, there could be better value in some of these positions.
But overall, you don't draft for need, though. You're talking about. Go ahead, Shawn.
I was just okay. So here's my point to all this. I have no idea if this is going to work. Obviously, I don't know that any of us do. Maybe Sheila Ford-Hamp does. She has some kind of a crystal ball or whatever, but I really don't. But I do know that he was consistent. He wanted a certain kind of an athletic person with a certain player with a kind of a personality, and that was true throughout the entire draft. If those 2 tackles hit, I don't have any idea whether they will, but if they hit, they are set up the middle, stopping the run and helping to collapse the pocket for a good long while. And that's the idea. And that is a huge part of defense. Maybe not the sexiest part of defense, but it's a critical part of defense. And we saw with the Lions the last couple of years, especially the last year, they couldn't stop anybody in that part of the field, right? Obviously, they need linebackers and cornerbacks and all that sort of thing. If Jeff Okudah comes around a little bit, maybe they're a little bit better. With Brockers coming in, I don't know, Core showed some stuff. They could be conceivably a little bit better. Maybe the fact that they want to play for the staff might help a little bit. No, seriously. You know what I mean?
No,
it's a miserable. I'm sorry, Carlos, but they were miserable a year ago. And if you don't think that matters, you've never done anything athletically at all. Period.
At the risk of ruining what I'm writing for Tuesday, I talked to TJ Hawkinson last week, and that was one of the things we talked about. Hawkinson shot this commercial last month where he was dressed up as a pro wrestler, same in George Kittle, and his little personality, and he's got a little bit of that, and I guess some of that has come out behind the scenes a little bit. But I asked him, I said, isn't that Jamal Williams? You see, right? They bring this guy in who's dancing, who likes to have fun. That's his personality. Levi Onwuzurike, we heard his press conference the other day, right? Like some of these things just wouldn't fly under the old regime. And I think that when you allow people to be themselves and have fun, and that was one of the comments that TJ Hawkinson told me. He said, we're bringing fun back to Detroit, and I think when you allow people to be themselves and they enjoy work and want to go to work, to your point, Shawn, and they're not dreading or walking on eggshells, when they're around people in the organization, I think That's not gonna make you a 10-win team, but that's gonna help get the best out of those people who can be themselves.
And that's not to say they were bad people, Carlos. Obviously they weren't. That was just their philosophy. I'm talking about Quinn and Patricia. That was the way they wanted to run things, and that's fine. If you saw the draft footage from when the Patriots called Mac Jones, did you guys see that clip package at all?
I didn't. No.
How quiet and dry and sort of stilted it was. It was unbelievable. And now that's worked for them. We'll see if it works without Tom Brady, right? But seriously, I mean, I'm with you, Carlos, in the sense that we don't know. I mean, they might not win at all. I mean, maybe it would just continue the Lions tradition. Who knows? But they showed consistency. I mean, but when I mean Holmes and Campbell and the staff and what they wanted, and they were very clear about it. And we'll see if it makes a difference. I don't know.
I just got a call from Tom Landry, Vince Lombardi, and Bill Belichick saying that they decided that fun is the key ingredient to winning in the NFL. So I do apologize. Matt Patricia was a big meanie. He was, like all the other 31 other NFL coaches were nice, fun guys. Took them to Cedar Point and all that stuff. So
hey, if you want to bring that kind of attitude without bringing the strategical acumen or the human relationship part of it, or Tom Brady with you, that's fine. If you want to go down that road, that's fine, but you better be pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's always, what do we talk about every time you fire a coach? He's
basketball. That's what we talk about. Go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I wish we could.
You fire a coach, he's the opposite of the last coach, the new guy that you hire. It's always the opposite, so this time it's all kumbaya, we all love each other, everybody's together on the same page, blah blah blah, better communication. Next time they're going to hire some hard ass, and in 3 or 4 years and this doesn't work, so you need some hard ass, and no, we've got to have a disciplined approach. We got to have assigned parking spaces. We've got to have, all this stuff. It's going to go right back. We've seen it over and over with the Lions. So maybe it works, Shawn. You're right. Who knows? I mean,
no, I don't know. I don't know if it'll work or not. All I know is that outside of New England, that's really not how the business is done at the top level of the league. Andy Reid's not like that. Bruce Arians certainly not like that. It's not like that in the NBA. It's not even like that in Major League Baseball anymore, which is arguably even more conservative in some ways than the NFL. I mean, AJ Hinch is pretty serious-minded, right, with the Tigers, but the culture is changing out there. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm not making a value judgment on it one way or the other. I'm just saying, I don't know. I mean, it's noticeable. Will it matter? Who knows? We'll see. But you're right, Carlos. The next regime is usually pretty different than the one that didn't succeed.
All right, let's get back to the draft here real quick. Carlos, Justin Fields, you didn't talk about quarterback when you were talking about passing on and taking Penei Sewell early. Justin Fields, are the Lions going to regret passing on Justin Fields 5 years from now?
That's, so we talked about this, Dave, you and I, and that's the worrisome issue here is, they're going to be facing Justin Fields twice a year. Right. And I didn't think it was a great idea to draft a quarterback this year. I mean, I wouldn't have hated it, but I don't think it was really that much of a priority to do it this year. And people go back and forth on Justin Fields after the 3 top quarterbacks. I don't know. I know you wanted your boy Trey Lance, you wanted your own Patrick Mahomes here, but those quarterbacks, especially in the COVID days, and a lot of questions with even Trey Lance not playing very much the last few years. So it's a gamble at 7. Like I said, I think they need more positions down the road. But yeah, when he throws 3 touchdowns, in that first game against the Lions, and Penei Sewell allows 3 sacks from Khalil Mack, fans are going to be looking at this a little bit differently, So that's the worrisome part for Holmes. He may have to live with this and regret it. It may not work out that way, but that's a concern. That's got to be a concern every time you're going to play the Bears.
Certainly something we will be discussing. All right, Shawn, I'm going to look for a sleeper pick from you here out of all the Lions draft picks. Obviously, Penei Sewell doesn't count, but
I was going to say Penei Sewell, because Carlos thinks he's going to suck.
All right, so we've got Levi Onwuzurike round 2, obviously Aleem McNeil round 3. And Fatu Melifonwu, the cornerback out of Syracuse, Monarrez St. Brown, the wide receiver out of USC, and Derek Barnes, the linebacker they traded up from, even Jamar Jefferson, if you want. Give me one of those guys that you think is going to, significantly outperform his draft spot, I guess. 3 years from now, who are we going to be talking about as maybe being
I mean, it's tempting to go with the receiver.
Yeah.
Right.
Monarrez.
And Barnes is interesting too. I mean, he's kind of got some of those qualities Carlos likes. He's got an old school linebacker quality, but some modern speed, that sort of thing, explosiveness. But I'm going to go with McNeil at the 3rd pick, just because I think, that's the one that Carlos dislikes the most. So that's basically why. No, I'm kidding. I just, his combination of athleticism and quickness and explosiveness and balance and hands and feet and all that. I just, we'll see. Is he, built the right way for that spot? I don't know. Maybe you question the leverage a little bit, but he's obviously got some power too. So he'd be the one for me.
It's a pretty great video, huh, Carlos? No, Shawn, he disappeared from our screen.
It's an upgrade.
There he is. He's back from the car.
Oh no, sorry. It was my wife calling, so I'll tell her.
All right.
I had to decline it.
Honey-do list. No, makes sense. Hey, McNeil's he's a heck of an athlete, so I certainly can see that. I'm on a Monarrez St. Brown guy myself. Just again, a guy that I thought was maybe a early 3rd round pick, and the Lions got him in round 4. And Carlos, to your point, he's going to play a lot. They need him. He'll probably start at slot receiver for him. Can play some outside too. Like I said, I had a scout text me and give me a Golden Tate, comp. And so if he's anything like Golden Tate in Detroit, obviously that'll be a good one. And then, guys, let's end it with this because, these things.
What about Carlos's sleeper pick?
All right, Carlos, let's get it. I just didn't value Carlos's opinion on that. It's like I didn't value your opinion on Fields. Go ahead, Carlos. Sleeper, who you got?
I was going to say St. Brown as well. It was, I think it was almost, other than Shawn, it was everybody's favorite pick in the draft for the Lions, huge position of need, undervalued. I would even potentially put in the Oregon State running back, Jamar Jefferson.
Just a good gamble for sure.
It's a good gamble. And even if he contributes a little bit and sticks on the roster and, he's a rotational guy, that's the 3rd to last pick in the draft. That's a lot of value if he's even able to make the team. Showed a lot of production at Oregon State. I think he's just small is the reason why he's been passed up. Some people had a 3rd round grade on him, more like a universal kind of 5th round pick. So that's really good value there. But on St. Ra, I gave him their first A when they picked him. So, I'm with you there.
Wow.
He's got great hands too, right?
Yeah, I suppose to. He's a good all-around player, physical blocker. Melifonwu, I like him as well. So I would say Melifonwu and St. Brown. Those would be the 2 guys that I would keep an eye on out of this Lions class. And I just wanted to last thing here. Look, since I asked you about Fields, and are we going to be talking about the Lions needing a quarterback again? Ultimately, we talk about where they're at in their rebuild and getting some pieces in place, but a lot of this comes down to Jared Goff still at the end of the day, right? Is Jared Goff the guy? What are we going to see from him this year? Are they going to be in the quarterback market again next year? And are they going to have that top 5 sort of pick where they're going to be able to go get their guy, whoever it is, Spencer Rattler, Keaton Slovis, whoever they like. So I don't know, forecast ahead for me a little bit, Carlos. Put your Lions prognostication hat on here. What are we going to be talking about a year from now that happens in the draft?
I don't think they're gonna. I think they don't want to have to draft a quarterback. They want to give Goff every chance to succeed. I think the guy's got talent. I've liked his play. I liked his grit, playing with a broken hand in the playoffs, and coming in, in that game in Seattle and helping them win. And I think he's going to be really motivated. I think Anthony Lynn's a good coach. I think he's going to be motivated. He's going to help him. He's worked with, veteran quarterbacks before himself. I think that he has a chance. I hope that they don't, if they don't have to get a quarterback, I think they definitely would not have to, and it's not going to be a great quarterback class for them. They certainly will have the draft capital with the extra 1st round pick probably to move up if that's what they feel. If Goff is just, god awful. But with, what is it, like 12 1st round picks on the offensive line now, and they're going to build a moat around him. So I said, if anybody even breathes, if a defensive player even breathes on Jared Goff, somebody needs to be fired.
Well, no, they need a right guard before you can say that.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. Next year, Shawn, to get the guard. I'm sorry.
First round, number 5 overall guard.
No, I think
top 5. They look. Sewell, he's a plug and play starter, but he's not. I don't think he's going to be, an elite pass protector day one when he walks in, right? But I mean, again, the feedback that I got was, hey man, if you want to go run the power behind this guy, he's just going to knock the snot out of whoever's on the other line. He's going to turn into a really good pass blocker, and he's going to be that. But he's also 20 years old, and to your point earlier, Carlos, about he's playing against grown men, so he's not going to be able to just knock them back like he did some of these guys in college. Doesn't mean he's not going to do that at some point or be great at some point. I do think he's going to be an excellent offensive lineman, but I think we have to keep the expectations for day one when he steps on the field and is starting at right tackle in check. Shawn, same question I asked Carlos. What are we talking about this time next year when we're wrapping up the Lions draft?
Well, it's hard to say. To Carlos's point earlier about Justin Fields, I think we say that because it's the Lions, right? And fans are conditioned to believe that. Of course, he goes to the Bears. He's going to end up great. Here's the thing, and you know this, Dave. You've written about this. We've talked about this almost ad nauseum. But quarterbacks, it's just so hard to gauge. It's such a gamble. Justin Fields could absolutely be the best quarterback in this draft, including Trevor Lawrence. He could be. We don't know, right? But I'm with Carlos about Goff. He throws a nice ball. He's shown some toughness. Maybe sometimes, we were talking about earlier about the coaching change here. Maybe him leaving Sean McVay, right, and coming here, I think might help. I mean, it's, as much as Stafford might benefit going there from a change, maybe Goff does here. I'm not saying Goff is as talented as Stafford, but he does throw, I think, a nice, easy, catchable ball, and he's got some toughness, and we'll see. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Carlos, to your point, he's not going to have a lot of guys to throw the ball to, at least on the outside. He's got Hawkinson, who's one of the better tight ends, but I don't know. I think he gets a couple of years to see what he can do, and it buys them some time to kind of put pieces around him. And then maybe they got a young team that they can find a quarterback down the road, kind of, right? Then they go get their quarterback.
I don't disagree with anything that either of you guys have said about Jared Goff or the quarterback position. He's 26 years old. He's obviously played in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Certainly too early to write him off. But I go back to a couple points. One, the Lions were willing to draft a quarterback this year, right? So they, they're realistic about, what they have at that spot, right? I mean, Brad Holmes after Saturday, he said, well, we're probably not drafting an offensive tackle round 1 next year, right? Because we've got Decker and we've got Sewell. So he was willing to draft a quarterback this year. Just the right one wasn't there. Trey Lance, I was a Trey Lance guy. Number 2, as much as we might think that there is some upside there with Goff and maybe he can recapture some of that, look, the Lions are not going to be a very good team next year. And so if we're talking about a team that wins 5 or 6 games, are we really going to come out of that season and say, that's my quarterback, right? That's the guy that I'm riding with for the next 10 years. I just don't know if that's going to happen. You throw in all that extra draft capital they have, 2 first-round picks, the extra 3rd rounder they're going to get from losing Kenny Galladay, a couple other comp picks. I would be keeping an eye on the quarterbacks this offseason if I were you Lions fans, the college quarterbacks, that is.
I have one thing to say about that is I think Jared Goff should contract with Kelly B. Stafford to work the spin machine. And when he wins 5 games, it's not his fault, and he did not have enough weapons, and he was doggone it. He's a tough guy. So I think if he works the PR angle, I think we can avoid blaming this all on Goff like we did for the other guy for 12 years.
Hey, look, Matthew Stafford did like an Access Hollywood over the weekend, if I'm not mistaken. I just got my Google alert on it. I mean, I think look, Kelly, Matthew, they're turning over a new leaf in Hollywood now. So let's just, I don't know what all that's going to amount to, but they certainly got their wish going out west there, and wish them luck going forward. But hey, look, we're almost out of time here on our Zoom session. So I want to say thanks as always to Carlos Monarrez and Shawn Windsor for joining me, talking a little draft. Detroit Lions first draft under Brad Holmes, and interesting class, going to be an interesting group to follow. We'll see what impact they have 2021, but more importantly down the road, because this is it's a rebuild that we're in. And I think if you got an honest moment with some of the Lions brass, they tell you the same, but they're excited about, where this thing is headed and the direction the arrow is pointing. So that'll do it for us. For Carlos Monarrez and Shawn Windsor, Dave Birkett, Freak.com.